welcome back to my channel. Let's talk about all the books that I read in autumn. I am repping the Illumicrate, what's it called? Merch, I guess? Illumicrate merch is being repped today. So I got the Late Night Readers Club, I don't know if it's backwards for you, but it's backwards for me, jumper. It's really soft, mini review I guess. It's really soft, it's nice. I got like a size up. It's nice and big. It's really comfy. It's really cozy. It's got really cool thing on the back. And I also got the book leggings. I really like them, and I'm happy to report that they are squat proof, picture proof here. Although I don't think I'm going to be going to the gym in them. But they have a really like silky feel. They're really stretchy. I think I got a size up on these as well, though I was a bit worried. I used their sizing thing and I measured myself because they were tape, but they fit really well. Yeah, I'm excited to see what else they come out with their merch. So in case you hadn't noticed, this term, in terms of uni terms and school terms, I have been extremely busy. Hence why I have not been uploading, in case you hadn't noticed. And I have also not been able to read much, so I thought I would just wrap up all of the books that I've read in September, October and November, the autumn months in the UK. So during these months I read a total of 9 books, actually 3 books per month, which is pretty evenly spread, and none of these books dropped below a 4.5 star. Now, I don't know if it's just the good mood I've been in or just the quality of what I've been reading, but everything that I've read in the past 3 months has been so good. I can't even begin to describe how happy I am with my reading in the past few months, despite not reading much. I currently have 10 books left on my Goodreads goal, and I have 3 weeks to complete that. Or 2.5. No, 3. Wait. Yes, 3. So the first book that I read in September was a reread of The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang. I'm not going to say much about this because everyone knows about The Poppy War, everyone knows it's really good. I give it 5 stars again. I don't like to re-rate things because I think it's a very different experience to read something for the second time. So I don't ever re-rate something because I may not enjoy it as much because I remember things or, you know, etc, etc. So I like to keep my rating from the first time round. But yeah, Poppy War, 5 stars as per usual. Brilliant, genius, dark, lots of trigger warnings. Please check them out if you are thinking of reading it. But again, it blows me away. The next book that I read in September was The House in the Cerulean Sea by TJ Klune, and I was very, very kindly gifted this by Maddie from Book Browsing Blog because I won her live show game thing that she did when she hit 1k, and she's now at 4k, which is insane. I'm so, so proud of her. Go and check her out. I'll put her in the description. But she highly recommended this to me as well. But this book just blew me away. So The House in the Cerulean Sea is set in a world where I'd say it's a little bit like the X-Men world, where children and adults like start to develop powers. Although at this point in the story, it's not like they're just starting to develop powers. It's been a good few years since they've developed powers. And the main character works at a sort of office. He kind of works for like social services. So he goes to check on orphanages. The place he works for is a magical social services. So he goes to orphanages and checks on the magical children, checks that they're doing okay, they're not being abused, obviously, checks that they're not danger to anyone else or to themselves. And he's got a very boring life. He's very like cut and paste. He just every day is the same. But he enjoys his job. He enjoys doing he enjoys doing it well. He likes to do it. But he like lives by the rule book, and he's got a very boring life. So one day his boss sends him on a 3-month, I think it's either 3 month or 1 month, I can't quite remember, a 1 month trip or 3-week trip, however long trip, to this orphanage, which is kind of out on this island, and he has to travel very, very far to get there. But it's got some of the most dangerous children, apparently, in the whole world or in the whole country. And he has to go there and just do his thing, like do his job, check on them, ensure they're not dangerous to everyone else or to themselves. and like whether the orphanage should be shut down, essentially. And when he gets there and he meets the children, he starts like sort of opening up. His mind opens, like he becomes more open-minded towards everything, including the guy who's in charge of the orphanage. And it's just really, really wholesome. And I don't really want to say too much more because when you meet the children, honestly, like, I don't like children. Like, in general, I don't get on with children very well in like day-to-day life. But like, these children in this book, they're so wholesome, and you root for them so much. You really start to care for them. So this book, like, I was crying towards the end. It's just so wholesome. Like, if there's one word to describe this book, it would be wholesome. And TJ Klune, like the way he wrote it, I really enjoy it, and I'm excited to pick up like other books by him. So obviously, I gave The Host in the Cerulean Sea 5 stars. Next, I read A Deadly Education by Naomi Novik. I really enjoyed this. I remember starting out and thinking she talks a lot, because the way that it's written is sort of like a diary, you know, kind of like, it reminds me of Angus Thongs and Full Frontal Snogging, the book series. It's written a bit like a diary. You're very much in Elle's head, and she just talks and talks and talks. And I will admit, there is like a lot of exposition and there's a lot of like info dumping, but because I liked the world so much and I liked the premise so much, I didn't quite mind that. And because the banter between characters and like the way characters developed, because it was so funny, I sort of liken it to Gideon the Ninth in my head in terms of like how much banter and how much, you know, rapport that the characters have with each other. It's really funny and it makes you laugh out loud. Yeah, it's kind of one of those books that crept up on me. I went in with a positive bias anyway, because I really like Naomi Novik and I love most of her books. I ended up giving this a 4.5 stars. It wasn't quite the full 5 stars for me. I would have liked a little bit more plot and less world building, but I still really enjoyed most aspects of this book. I'm sure most people know what A Deadly Education is about, but if you don't, it's about a girl called Elle who goes to this school called Scholomance, and it's kind of like an evil school, I want to say. It's been likened to like Hunger Games crossed with Hogwarts. So a bit like there's lots of demons and stuff, and they sneak up to the school, and the school like is like on a rotating thing, and once you get to the bottom you graduate and you get out, but there's buckloads of demons at the bottom and you have to like fight your way out, but you have to be very careful, and you know, there could be a demon around any corner or in the library and stuff, and people stick together, or you know, Elle, the main character, is quite ostracized, but she's also like one of the most powerful witches, or I don't know what they're called, sorcerers, to ever come through Scholomance, but people don't know that, and she has a speciality in languages. Again, like I said, there's not actually much plot to it, so I couldn't really tell you, but there's like a himbo character who's really kind and stupid and beefy, and he's great. I will say there have been some controversies about this book to do with the representation, so I would say check that out before you go into it. I didn't know anything about that before I went into it because I read it as soon as it came out, but I definitely say to look into that, because I think Naomi has made a statement about that, as well as any book companies that have had Deadly Education, like Illumicrate and Alcrate, have both made statements as well, so I'd go check those out before you go into this thinking, like, go into this blind maybe. Next up, in October, I read The Devil in the Dark Water by Stuart Turton. Now, Stuart Turton wrote The 7 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle, which was one of my favourite books of 2018, because he's a very slow writer. See you in another 2 years, is what he said after this book came out. So The Devil in the Dark Water is of the same vein as The 7 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle, in terms of it's like a murder mystery genre mashup with like sci-fi-y type vein into it. So it's all set on a ship, which is a pretty cool setting. I really enjoyed that setting. There's kind of like a Sherlock and Watson type duo who are the main characters, but the main character is the Watson type, not the Sherlock type, because the Sherlock type ends up being like locked up for all of the book essentially, so he's not really about. So it ends up that the Watson type character has to do the job of like the Sherlock type character. I'm really sorry, I'm forgetting the names of literally everyone in every book, but you know, you don't need the names, it's fine. Basically, there's a devil aboard the ship and people are dying, weird things are happening, this brand keeps, like, this mark keeps turning up on stuff, you know, at one point, like, all of the sheep or like, you know, all the livestock on board are like slaughtered. There's lots of different characters, lots of different motives, lots of stuff going on. It's very, very convoluted, but I really, really like that. Some people, I will say this book isn't for everyone, and it's the same with Seven Deaths. They're not for everyone. They are quite long, and they are quite, you know, there's a lot of twists and turns, but you may, like, I feel like some people get bored with that, but I eat that up. Like, if it was even like 100 more pages, I would have loved it, because I like seeing the tension drawn out and, you know, trying to figure out myself, like, what's going on, like, who's doing this, who's doing that. I love guessing who's doing what. Like, at one point I was like, oh, is it this person? And thought I was like so clever, and it was nowhere near. So I gave The Devil in the Dark Water 5 stars. Next, I reread Kingsbane by Claire Legrand. Again, another reread because the final book came out in September as well. Oh no, sorry, it came out in October. This is the second book to the Imperium trilogy, the first one being Furyborn. Again, if you've been on this channel before, you know what Furyborn's about. I am not about to retell you what Furyborn's about again, so just read it. Please just read it. I gave Kingsbane 5 stars. Again, another reread of 5 stars. I wasn't going to change the rating, so 5 stars. Next, in October, I read The Boneshard Daughter by Andrea Stewart. This book really took me for a loop. So the first 100 pages, I read them and I was like, this is cool. I'm getting into it. It's like, all right. And I put it down and I wasn't really motivated to pick it back up again. But once I did, I must have like stopped just before it started getting good, because once I picked it up, I did not put it back down for like, I read it in another 2 sittings, like in another few hours. It was so good. I just really, really enjoyed the premise. I really enjoyed the way that all of the characters and the perspectives like wove together, and like slowly figuring out things and being dropped hints of like who's connected to who and like why something else is going on because of someone in another perspective. And I think just the way it was brought together was really, really clever and really, really entertaining. So The Boneshard Daughter is mainly about a girl who is the heir to the throne of the Emperor. And the magic system in this, oh, it's so cool. Like, I don't think I've ever really been so invested in a magic system and thought about how it works and been so interested in about how it works. So the way that the magic system works is the Emperor, I guess he's been in charge for what, like 150 years now. I don't really know how old he is. The way his magic works is, so he gets a tithe from like everyone in the country. They have to have a bit of bone taken from the back of their skull, and that's their bone shard, and hence the like title Boneshard Daughter. So that's the shard of their bone, and he uses these shards to like carve commands on, and he can create constructs from them. You can have low-level constructs, like he's got like little spy ones, like look a bit like squirrels, and they have like maybe 1 or 2 bone shards in them, maybe just 1. But then he has constructs that like essentially run the country for him. He's got like a construct of war, a construct of spies, construct of trade, and a construct of something else. Might be like economics or something. The way it was described and just the way this magic system works, I just thought it was so cool, and I was really, really involved and interested. And the daughter has lost her memories. He keeps drip feeding her information and like not letting her learn the bone shard magic, and she's so desperate to learn it and like so desperate for his approval. And that's kind of the main premise of it. But there are a lot of other perspectives that aren't really mentioned in the synopsis. So I'm thinking maybe not to mention those, because I was pleasantly surprised by those other perspectives, and there's not really much I can say about them without like spoiling little bits here and there. But there are other perspectives of what's going on, like sort of in the rest of the islands and the rest of the country, I guess, the empire, and it's all really interesting and it all interconnects. So I gave The Boneshard Daughter 5 stars. Next, let's move on to November. So the first book I read in November was The Space Between Worlds by Micaiah Johnson. Now this book was just amazing. It was so beyond the synopsis of what I thought it would be and what I expected. So the synopsis is there are 308 worlds and Kara is dead in all but 8 of them. So essentially there are parallel worlds, and Kara is our main character, and she gets to travel between these worlds because you can't travel to a world if you are still alive in it, if your doppelganger is still alive in it. As she's dead in all but 8 of them, she is sort of the best at her trade, the best at her job, because she can travel to more worlds than anyone else. When you see that at surface level, that's like, oh, that's a cool premise. But when you read the book and you dig a little bit deeper, it's written by a black woman, and Kara herself is a black woman, black character as well. It really, really deep down, like, gets to the root of some of the issues that black women and black people in general face. So thinking about it, the reason that she's dead in all of these worlds is because she is from such a poor area and, you know, lives in poverty and is more likely to be killed. So, like, the rich people can't traverse, is what they call it. They can't traverse, so they have to hire these low down people from outside the posh city. There's like a really big posh, like, technological city, and then there's like the outside outskirts. So they have to hire down because those are the only people who can do that job. There's just a really good narrative on, you know, race and, you know, rich versus poor, poverty. Everything has layers in this book. Honestly, it's one of the best sci-fis I think I've read in a long time, and I really, really, really would recommend it to anyone. I did only give it 4.5 stars. It just wasn't quite there for me, with a little bit of pacing, literally just the tiniest little smidge of pacing. Whenever I put 4.5 stars on Goodreads, I always round it up to 5 because they deserve it, especially, you know, POC writers, just give it 5 stars. I'm just like, yeah, you deserve it. But yeah, I would highly, highly recommend you read this book. Next up, I read Lightbringer by Claire Legrand, which is the final book in the Imperium trilogy. Again, not going to go through what the Imperium trilogy is about because I talked about it so much, but I really, really enjoyed Lightbringer. I cried through the last, like, 4 chapters of it, maybe even more. I just was crying, like, literally just lying in my bed, sobbing away. And I was like, I really hope none of my flatmates or housemates come and knock on my door because I will tell them to piss off. And I gave Lightbringer 4.5 stars because, again, it wasn't quite up there with me for Kingsbane. So I gave Furyborn 4.5, I think, or either 4 or 4.5, Kingsbane 5 stars, and then Lightbringer. I initially did 5 stars, but then I was like, no, it's not quite as good as Kingsbane for me, so I brought it back down to a 4.5. And then the last book I read in November was An Ember in the Ashes by Sabaa Tahir. So I wanted to read this before I purchased the Fairy Loot editions because I was like, there's no way in hell I'm going to spend 90 quid on these editions if I haven't even read the first one. So I kind of sped read the first one in November, just in time before buying the editions, because I thought if I don't like it, I won't buy the editions. If I do like it, I will buy the editions, because I'm not one of those people who will buy special editions of books just to sell them on, like just for the value. So, like, for example, as well, there's the Iron Fae series Fairy Loot are doing in January. I'm just not going to buy that. I'm not going to buy it because I'm not really interested in reading the first book either. I may later on and down the line and regret it, but whatever. But I really hate when people buy the special editions, especially if they're like a subscriber and they get early access and then they just sell them straight away. It's just such a dick move. They sell them as well for like 300 quid. I'm like, what are you doing? Like, what the fuck's wrong with you? So An Ember in the Ashes follows 2 perspectives. One is Elias and one is Laya. Laya is I was just gonna say peasant. I guess she is a kind of a peasant. And she just, you know, chills in her village. And Elias is one of the baddies at the school who gets trained to become a mask. And a mask is like, I guess, kind of like the high elite kind of police in the world. It's a fantasy world, but I don't think there's any magic in it. It's mainly like historical fantasy with not much magic, I don't think. I don't recall there being any magic. I might be making that up. I might be just forgetting there's magic in it. But it's like an enemies to lovers, but typical YA, I want to say. But like good typical YA. So it's got like all of the tropes of like typical YA, but it's done very, very well. It's very entertaining. It's very fast paced. And, you know, there's a lot of tension and you really like, I feel for the characters and I want to ship them. And I love when a book gives me someone to hate as well. Not even just one person, a couple of people in the book, like a couple of the villains or like other people. I would just like, I hate you, go away. Like, I don't just want to be able to love some characters, I want you to make me hate the villains or hate like people who are being dicks. And if they do that, then I know it's a good book. Elia joins like an underground rebel thing because the emperor is a dick and the peasants constantly get shit on. And they, you know, the masks like terrorize them. Her parents get killed, her grandparents get killed. She's an orphan and literally like she just can't be asked anymore. I didn't really know much more going into this than that, and I kind of liked that. I liked not knowing what was going to happen because sometimes they give you too much in like the synopsis. But anyway, I gave An Ember in the Ashes 4.5 stars because again, it's one of those ones where I was like, it's not as low as a 4-star, but it's not quite like peak 5-star. Like, I have a very picky set of criteria for 5-star. Despite, you know, I rate a lot of things 5-star, but this kind of proves I don't just like 5-star willy-nilly. Anyway guys, that was my autumn wrap up. I hope to see you in another video soon. It's nearly Christmas, so we'll be doing a lot of Christmas content and, you know, end of year content, best of the year, stuff like that. Don't forget to leave a comment and tell me what your recent reads have been. Have you read any of these? How did you feel about them? Do you think my ratings are good or do you disagree? Also, don't forget to like and subscribe, you know, retweet my tweets, go follow me on Twitter, all that jazz. So I'll see you in another video soon. Bye!